So for this one, we're going to talk about what are my anchors. So the way this came about was Carol had been recruiting people to, come and work on this, and I wasn't going to do it, but then we came up short. So that's kind of the story of my life, is that there's nobody else. So if anybody else would possibly okay, and so before Carol actually asked, I just got ideas that came from the Lord. So this is a climbing anchor. I don't know who's ever, not anchor, this is a camp, but it's for climbing. I don't know if how many people have seen these. But you put these into a crack in the rock, and then it releases a spring and it wedges itself in, and you build a climbing anchor sometimes with these. Sometimes you just shove something in there that's just a fixed piece, and there's some other stuff you can do too. I can be 600 feet above granite floor, and this is what's holding me up. Not just one. I never ever have just one anchor. You always put a number of them, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I can tell you. We got to keep the time, and I need to remember to set the timer here. So having said that, but you always have 2 or 3 at least anchors, and that's one that I can use, and I will trust my life to that. I don't know the person personally that will be important later. This is an anchor where it goes up, could attach with those, could attach other ways, and it usually looks something like this, and I just did this a couple of weeks ago. And every time I set one of these up, and I'm going to go lower myself on it or rely on it, there's 3 things here for in case one of them breaks. They go through different strands so that if anything breaks, there's backup, and there's 2 of these, and they lock, and there's knots, and there's stuff that's set up, and you can set these up with 3 or 4 different points. They don't have to be 2. This is an anchor. We call this an anchor. This is an anchor that I built. And so I trust my life to it. I trust my life to the rope, people that made the ropes. Who Packed Your Parachute was a book a while back. And so that's one of the first things I thought. Obviously there's anchors like on a ship. The Christian symbol for hope is an anchor. They make sea anchors that don't look like regular anchors. They just look like a big bag. And it just drags in the water. And it slows the ship down, and by doing that they can kind of stabilize their position. So that's the stuff that kind of came to me when I was thinking about how you keep the faith in terms of anchors. How would you anchor yourself to the faith? And Carol shared some things for her. If you'd asked me, and I did think about this when I was preparing, if you asked Carol, I knew that probably the first thing she'd say that was one of her anchors is the Eucharist. Because when I first met her, and we started talking about the faith and talking about some of the stuff we were hearing from other people in Surge, that was one of the first things she said. I can never leave the Eucharist. So that's an anchor. And you can't just have one. Like I was telling you, I don't rely on just one. I don't want to rely on just one. Okay, so Philippians 3:12. It's the verse I always remember. I don't always remember it word for word, but it says, since basically, this is going to be always paraphrasing me, almost always. Since Jesus grabbed onto me, I am grabbing onto him. That's Philippians 3:12 in a nutshell. Hopefully I got that right. So, St. Augustine, when he wrote his Confessions, I don't know who's actually ever read it. I haven't read it all the way through. I've listened to lectures on it. I haven't done the real work yet. But he said, I was looking for something, and then I realized I was looking for God. And then when I got there, I realized God had been looking for me. So from that, I got the sense that there's this thing of we're moving toward God, and God's moving toward us. And So here's how it comes out. So the first thing, there's going to be 3 sections on this for you. And the first one is, what draws you? What desire or desires did God create as part of your deepest being? What is drawing you to Him? And it won't be necessarily explicit. And the first thing that I put, which is really true, really true, is I have a desire to know. I want to understand things, and I want to know, above all else, what's real. I have always wanted to know what's real. So when I was young, and I was not raised in the faith, I was baptized when I was 11, which I'll tell you that story in a little bit, very shortly. When I was very young, I read a lot of science. I really wanted to understand how things work. I would take things apart all the time. I did not always know how to put them back together. The other thing that was funny was, when I was very young, I was really interested in myths, in mythology, and fables, Aesop's fables. I was very interested in that. But you look at that and go, well, you got science and you got that, what's going on there? And the thing they have in common is that they're real. And you go, well, a fable's not real. You know, a proverb's not real, a parable's, but it is. It's telling you the truth. It's telling you some truth. We don't remember the ones that don't tell us truth. But when we think about the story that I was just telling somebody, which I forgot which one it was, but you know, some of the fables and stuff, the one about ones where the dog in the manger, you know, where the dog is in there and the cow wants to eat the hay. The dog can't eat the hay, but it barks at the cow, won't let the cow eat the hay. So we say it's somebody that is trying to keep people away from something good that they don't like. They're a dog in the manger. And you see this all the time. So if you go through the Aesop's fables, man, there's just a lot of this. So I was responding to the truth that was in these fables. And of course, for science, you know, it's that if you throw something up in the air, it comes back down. That's gravity, and that's true. It's really there. And of course, now we say, well, it's the bending of the curving of time and space and all that. But the behavior is still true. You know, whatever physics goes on behind it, it's still something that's real. I was just really strong in that without ever actually naming it. I didn't say when I was 8 years old, I really want to understand things. But I really want to understand things. I had a very chaotic family. It was dysfunctional in a big way, exposed to a lot of things that a child shouldn't have to deal with. It was a real mess growing up. And maybe part of the reason I wanted to know what was real was because everything around me was a mess. You know, maybe I was looking for solid ground. I don't know. The other thing is that I really wanted to participate. I really wanted to be involved in things. I wanted to have a chance to do it. And when I was a child, the way that I was raised, most of the time it was, you can't do that. You know, you go over to somebody's house and there's a piano there, and you can't go and tinker with it. Because that's their piano. Children should be seen and not heard. So it was a very strange growing up. And then when I got to a point where I could actually do things, I just went nuts. I mean, it was like, I just wanted to do things, be involved, participate. I have a huge capacity for interest. I have a huge capacity just to hunger for everything, and not just knowledge and stuff like that. I really hunger for experience and to taste things deeply. When I love to tell everybody this, it's such a cool story. But, you know, when I ripped that tendon out, the whole thing of that, I actually embraced. Because it's like, it's done. I mean, it's not like, it's not going away. So I'm going to make the most of this. You know, and I went and I looked up online with one hand, you know, what the tendons were in there and all worked. And I peppered the surgeon with questions, you know, about what he was going to do and why he didn't do this, you know, stuff like that. I learned a lot. But I fully embraced it. I didn't go, oh, what a bummer this happened. Because it happened. You just go, you know, it just, and that's a yearning to understand too, because I wanted to fully experience it. If you fully experience something, you have a better chance of understanding it. If you don't fully experience it, you're not really in the real world. You know, I get, I don't know, it's reality. The other day I was listening to a lecture, strangely enough, a lecture on Augustine, on his writing, and they were talking about, they said we have 2 million words preserved from Augustine. 1,600 years later, there are 2 million words of his that are written that have never been unpublished. They're always there, and we don't have everything he wrote. And when I heard that, my heart actually hurt. I had a heartache like when you see something that you want so much, because all I could think of was, I want to read it all. I want to know everything he said. And I can't possibly do that. It's just be an unreasonable goal. Some of them aren't even translated into English yet, because I understand it, or at least not modern. So it's a funny thing. It's like, almost it feels like being in love for me to want to know something. But not anything, I want to know the things that matter. So there are actually whole things that I almost completely ignore. I just don't care. It's kind of funny. It's supposed to just stay on. Okay, so let's see. The other thing is that I have found other people are not as excited as me. So a lot of the time, I will talk to people about things. A lot of the time, they get enthusiastic over it. I know that once I'm on, they're not going to go back and do anything with it. But sometimes I can make it interesting, and because it's probably because I just have so much passion for it that it's a little bit infectious, you know. Okay, I'll move forward. So there was when I was, so I got baptized at 11, and I can tell you that story now. Yes, I am. I got baptized at 11. When I was 9, my mother our family really had a hard time. My mother had kind of a nervous breakdown, but in those days, I mean, we were poor, so she couldn't go to the hospital. She just said, asked my brother to take me to North Carolina to live with him for a while she tried to pull herself together. And she did. So 3 months I was in North Carolina with my brother. Nothing to do. He had no children. He had no idea what to do with me. He was 19 years older than me. So there was really nothing that was going to come out of it. We played chess. He taught me how to play chess. He beat me every day. That was good, because that's how you learn. But the only thing they had 2 books. They had the book of calisthenics, the U.S. Army book, U.S. Air Force book of calisthenics, okay? And they had a family Bible. They had a Catholic Bible in English on the coffee table. Those are the 2 things. And so I looked at the calisthenics, but I ended up reading the Bible all the way through, because I had 3 months. And there was nothing else to do. I did do a little work on a farm. For 3 times. And I skipped over some parts. I'm not saying I did a complete, I didn't memorize it. I did memorize pieces of it. And I didn't forget the stories. Anyway, so that happened. I went back home. That's it. 11 years old. It was time to go into junior high, and there were things going on. My mother was very concerned for my safety, and so she contacted the local Catholic school and said, could he go here? He's not Catholic, but I'm really worried about him, and could we do that? And they said, sure. My mother could talk the legs off of a donkey and then get it to go for a walk afterward. So they let me do that, and the Sister Agnella, who was about my mother's age, about 50 at the time, gave me a catechism and said, by the way, in case you're curious what we believe in, here's the book. And it's in here. So I took it home and read it through overnight. Boom, just went through. Went back the next day, said, what do I have to do? This is true, I need to get baptized. Because with the scriptures and that, it was like, boom, and this is it. This is what I need to do. There wasn't any doubt to me this was real, and it was true. I had no pressure from family. I had 0, and my grandfather was very upset when I didn't get that. So, take that, fast forward to being 14, and boy, I don't know why I'm doing it. I worry about it. 14 years old, freshman in high school, and I just somehow managed to go to a dress rehearsal of a play. The play happened to be Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmond Rostand. Does anybody here know the actual play? Not the movie with Steve Martin, for goodness sake. But if you've ever heard of it, I think it's worth seeing. And I'm a high school freshman in the audience, and the ending of the play is this. By the way, for those that don't know, Cyrano de Bergerac is based on a real person who was known to have a very, very large nose. And when he's played in the 1950 movie, I think is the one we're seeing, but his nose is really, this long in the movie. Okay? And he's the best swordsman in France. He's this fantastic guy, back in those sword fighting days of the Three Musketeers type of time. Very contemporary to that. He is in love with this woman. It's the most beautiful woman, but of course, because of his nose, he knows that he can't bear to be rejected, so he doesn't tell her. Another guy comes along, is in love with her. The guy's good looking, but he can't talk to women. So Cyrano gives him the words and he moves her into it. Then dies. Long time forward, the woman finds out that really Cyrano is the one that she loved, because it was his words. He was the one with the great heart. And the ending of the play, he's an older man. He's just been attacked by assassins by running him over with a wagon. And the ending of the play, and this is what I saw as a freshman. He's very close to death. No, not here, not lying there. Let no one help me. Let no one need help. It is coming. I feel already shod with marble, gloved with lead. Very well. Let the old fellow come now. He shall find me on my feet, sword in hand. Cyrano. Oh, somebody else called him Cyrano. I see him now. He grins. He is looking at my nose. That skeleton. You there. 100 against 1, eh? I know them now, my ancient enemies. Falsehood, there. There, prejudice. Compromise, cowardice. What's that? Surrender? No, never. Ah, you too, vanity. I knew you would overthrow me in the end. No, I fight on. I fight. All my laurels you have riven away, and my roses. Yet in spite of you, there is one crown I made away with me. And tonight, when I enter before God, my salute shall sweep away the stars from the blue threshold. One thing without stain, unspotted from the world, in spite of doom, mine own that is, my white plume. And he dies. And I wept. I can't read it without feeling it now. And I've read this and seen it 100 times. And that hit me. And it's something about it. And that is something God put into me as one of my anchors. That's how I seek Him. There's some part of God in that. If you ever really study this, I could do an hour's talk just on Cyrano. The white plume means a lot more. So that brings us to the second thing is, how does God speak to you? Because that's another anchor. We reach out to God because we see something that we love and that we want. But at the same time, as Augustine said, He's reaching out to us. And what is He doing? How does He speak to you, lead you, encourage you, refresh you? One way that God refreshes me is I go back when I'm in a bad mood. I go back and I watch just that scene in Cyrano. I just go look it up on YouTube. And it moves me. And I weep, and then I feel better. And I realize there's beauty. It revives me in some way. It revives my crushed spirit. When my spirit feels crushed, that's one of the things I go to. It's far from the only one. There's hundreds of them. There's words for me, books, lyrics. Funny conversation with a musician somebody's very good guitar player, and he said, I actually don't care about the lyrics. He said, I just care about the music. It's like, let me pull that out. Because for me, the lyrics matter, because the words matter. Cartoons, poetry, Bugs Bunny, I mean, mattered. There was some truth, there was something there, you know? The thing, anybody here know Bugs Bunny at all? You know, when the guy does something that really offends him, you know, like insults him, breaks something he is, and Bugs Bunny looks at the broken thing and he goes, of course you know this means war. And I took a part of that and carried it into myself to keep me able to go. That's why I can fail and fail and fail, because I will come back. I will just keep going until the day I drop dead, just like Sarah. I fight on, fight on. All of this, it's like God telling me who I am. He's giving me strength, and He's giving me what I was looking for. And those are anchors for me. Even graffiti, I can't go too long on this, but even graffiti, there's times where I've seen graffiti that was like, this is profound. And I remember it. I remember the graffiti. Okay. I remember the graffiti when I went to college first time, Cal Poly Pomona. And it was on the bathroom stall, and somebody had written, you know, St. Nicholas football rocks! You know, because they got out of high school, they loved their high school team, they were really a big deal, right? And they're like, man, it was great writing, you know, with the big exclamation point, the circle thing, you know, underneath it, the whole bit. And underneath it, written in just beautiful, legible, neat handwriting, printed, legible printing, very neatly. You're not in high school anymore, Junior. I still remember it. I still remember the lyrics. Sound of silence, the words of the prophets are written on subway walls. Graffiti. God's truth is everywhere. God is speaking all the time. He's speaking through us. He's speaking through people. And He's speaking through bad people. He's speaking through good people. He's speaking through fools. I have a lot of quotes in my head. Even a fool has a story to tell. It's not the visuals as much for me as the lyrics. The Bible obviously is a huge source. The Bible is an absolutely huge thing, and every time I need it, the Bible verses come forward. I always get what I need. And I can still read it and get more out of it. Absolutely. Science. Funny thing. See how this works out. Please don't slide. So I just got interested, and I was getting stuff because of my children. You know, I was always trying to show them new things. I wanted to show the children everything. Naturally, what else would I do? So this, oh, let me aim that a little differently. Don't want to vaporize. Okay, this is an ultraviolet laser. It's not just a regular laser, it's ultraviolet. It'll actually burn your skin if you.
Maybe Diego should move.
No. It's not that weak. Okay, so here's the thing. If you shine it through water, it looks purple, right? Okay. Shine it through here, it'll look purple.
What is that?
Tonic water. It's got quinine in it. Quinine is energized by the ultraviolet light energy and returns it with less energy because it heats up and some other stuff happens. And if I take it too long, tell me this. But you can imagine how long I could do this, right? I could do it an hour on the fluorescent. It's fluorescent phenomenon. But watch this. If I do that, I'm going to do it this way instead. It goes through the water and it hits the water, but the paper doesn't react the same way. And if I do it with this, see the water still gets the purple.
Wow.
Only this water reacts to the ultraviolet. And this is the way that God reaches me as well. Because some people read Scripture, get nothing. Other people read Scripture, they light up. Some people receive the Eucharist for years, never really hits them. It's truly the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And truly, truly, they don't care. You receive it, they don't care. They're getting something because God isn't going to be there with nothing. But it's just like this. So when I see things in nature, when I see things in science, when I see anything, that's what I thought of. I showed that to my confirmation class. I showed them with a little more detail. I have a video out of it actually. But there are people that can actually pass on. I saw a lecture, again on Augustine, just because this is Augustine data. I saw a lecture on Augustine given at MIT, and I don't know if the teacher's got any faith. Probably doesn't. He's not teaching religion, he's teaching philosophy. But somebody could hear him passing on the words of Augustine and be affected by it. You know, he could transmit it. It could pass through him without ever having any effect on him. That's the way life works. And I use this metaphor whenever I need to in teaching or talking to people or when I need it for myself. Does that make sense? So, you know, I'm trying to do this very quickly because of time that I do and watching it. Just her presence reminds me to watch it. Because I'm trying to do my duty. That's one of the things that we share, although she's better at it than I am. The other anchor, obviously, is Carol's example. It's very rare to have somebody that worked out some of the things that she worked out early in life. And she may struggle sometimes with some of the reasoning and some of the facts and stuff. You know, you gotta go search the world to find. But on the other hand, I struggle horribly with making the right call because I am filled with passion. I am filled with energy. God, it's like I'm a 12-volt human and God fed me with 24,000 volts. He just gave me, like, whoa, why'd you do this? I don't know why. And I don't manage it well. It took me a long time, and I'm kind of almost there. I think I'm more or less there. It took me a long time to control my temper. Because, man, I had a good temper. And it took me a long time. And I don't even know why it got better, except that I had duties. I think the fact that I had Carol to consider, as soon as we met, she told me, here's the things you don't do, you know, because, you know, she didn't have a lot of respect for sarcasm and anger, you know, I mean, all the nasty, outward, rotten things, you know, those are not good things. With the children, if you are mean to a child, you can bend them or break them. And I knew that. I still was harder on my children than I wish I would have been sometimes. Boy, do I regret some of that. Okay, so then moving on to the third thing. The third one is not something we talk about, and it's probably harder to understand, and I want to give you something to help you kind of take a shot at it. It's integrating your intellect and your passion. It's integrating the will and the intellect. And it's a major part of Catholic teaching and belief that we, created in the image and likeness of God, means we have both will and intellect, or passion and intellect if you want to bend it a little bit, but will and intellect. And intellect, to a large degree, has been my strong point because I had this hunger. God gave me this hunger. It's not like I said, oh, I'm going to be a person that really thinks about things. And we're talking in the theological sense here, not intellect like wearing glasses and, oh, I look intellectual now. But it's not about that. It's not about having a PhD. It's about reasoning and thinking about things. And the two parts are intellect and will. And the will is what we want. You've heard the saying, you know, the heart wants what it wants. We can want things that are not good for us, and sometimes it takes intellect, it takes thinking for us to figure out it's not good for us. Going out and reading what somebody else wrote, often, I mean, I always think it has to be, but to some degree, a function of reason. You know, unfortunately, that's not always like this, because there's some things that are written to persuade that appeal only to the will. So when we're out of balance, that's a problem. Augustine said, because this is Augustine Day, Augustine said that we are disintegrated. That in the fall, and really every person does this to some degree, we break things apart. We break ourselves apart. And part of us goes to chase after this, and the other part chases after that. And we're out of balance. The intellect and the will are not balanced. Sometimes we want so much, and we don't temper it with the reason. And sometimes we think something, we get some weird idea in our head that doesn't really benefit us, but we get in this circular weird thinking and obsess on something. But our heart is shrunk. We don't love. We're having a problem. Some of us have met people that are overly intellectual, we say, and they're not feeling people. They have no care for what anybody else really feels. They don't understand people. So stuff like that. Just to pull back on this, just because I think it's fun to do. Now, I don't. Anybody here a mathematician? No mathematicians. Oh, okay. But engineering, and you'll understand this. So here's the funny thing about climbing. If I hang it like this, if I hang anything like this, when I'm looking for supports, perfect. This is good form because they're balanced. Okay? And everything is pulling in the direction. We're working together. But when it's spread like this, you die. If I try to lower and they're spread out like this, it will actually generate forces against each other. The two anchor points here where my thumbs are, it will generate forces there that are so high, it will actually just rip it apart. You wouldn't think that's possible. This stuff's strong enough to carry a car. But if you do this, it'll break and you die. It may not break this, but it will pull stuff out and it's anchored. The point is, here, they're working against each other. So here's the will, and here's the intellect. Okay? And they're working against each other. But if they're working in the same direction, see now, then it works. Then intellect and will are balanced. Because they're working together. They're both trying to achieve the same end, but not working against each other. That's the worst thing right here. So, hopefully that makes sense. But the point is not just that you need to have them work together. Do you see how it goes back to the second thing? See, when I see a physical object, it tells me something about God. It tells me something about being human. That's the way that God talks to me. And that's what I try to teach my children to the degree I can, but each one of them is going to have their own anchors because they're not me. It's them, and like you, each of you is going to have some way that God draws you, something that you wanted, and you didn't know it was God. But there's something, and maybe you went in the wrong direction. And there's ways that God speaks to us, and some of us we get that wrong. The idea is that when we engage both intellect and reason, or intellect and will in harmony, it's like a bird having two wings to fly. It doesn't make any sense just to have one. They have to work together and cooperate. If they're both like that doesn't get you anywhere. So I think to a large degree, for me, as I've got older, it's become more integrated. I'm far from perfect. Augustine, I believe, said something about that in heaven you have passionate reason. And I really like that. That they're united so perfectly that they're not like two separate things anymore. They're just working together and you're a whole person. You're integrated. And so I think it'd be interesting in that third box to kind of just explore how you feel about yourself that way. By saying on here, how do you think and how do you feel? And how integrated is it for you? And it's good to be honest with ourselves. If we feel that, I'm too much in my head and I'm not really responding to the love of God, well, that's too much intellect maybe and not enough will, because we respond to God's love really through our will. I do a lot through my intellect, and that doesn't always serve me well, because my will runs wild, because the intellect's over here going, I'm very orderly, and my will's going, I want this over here. It's just crazy. So, here's the thing, is that through all this, it means that I have something to look forward to. I can see progress, I have my anchors, and I trust my anchors. I understand what God's doing in my life, and that He will continue to do it because He loves me. And no matter what I do, He will keep trying to call. He'll keep trying to get me integrated. He'll try to get me where I can work the way I should work. And in a sense, that gives me hope. And if you remember, the symbol for hope is an anchor. So hope is the other anchor. So that's that. I'm going to give you these papers, and I'll get you pens, and you can just, and you can ask questions and everything. You want to just take one test? Let me grab the pens and do this. And if you need a pen, take one and pass it down. And then you can just try to write something, and then, there we go. Okay, so I know we're supposed to do questions or comments. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
So my question, and I probably, it's kind of like the front end, and dig it a little bit deeper, but how do you know exactly how to find your intellect, where you get your intellect from? Because I know that I have a lot of passions, but it was something about from what I wrote down, your passion, your will is what you want, but your intellect is right and wrong. So is that just through every day going between right and wrong, or is that what the scripture says what is right and wrong? Or?
So as funny as this is going to sound, a lot of it is not so much about right and wrong, but if you want to develop a conscience, it requires a certain amount of understanding. And that development of that understanding, that's a lot the job of the intellect. Now, the will's there too, because love is a reason to do the right thing, but love has to be informed. See how they work together? So it's a lot of it is like if somebody tries to get you, it's like a really good friend is trying to get you to do something wrong, or somebody that you love is trying to get you to do something wrong. You go, well, love is a reason for me to do what they want. No, because maybe what they're asking for is unreasonable. See, reason is the trick. So once you understand the situation, then you can start to explore right and wrong. But if you don't understand it, what you end up with is just trying to follow the rules. And that's the hard part, because rules work great until you run into a lawyer. And you know what I mean. I mean, there's always somebody who goes, what's a great example from Scripture? Because I was like, Scripture. Scripture is the temptation in the desert. The devil uses Scripture. Hey, throw yourself down. Hey, the Bible says He won't even let you hurt your foot on a stone. And Jesus goes, yeah, it also says don't tempt the Lord your God. I mean, Jesus was able to respond to the Lord, but the devil's a lawyer. I'm not saying all lawyers are bad. There's a whole tradition in Greek, going back to the Greeks, of sophistry. Being able to argue for the wrong skillfully. And it's a huge problem all over the world and all through history. But seeking understanding is the trick. Okay. And the other thing is, always start, and here's the funny thing. This is actually starting using your intellect, is how you use your intellect. It's how you get your intellect to build it, is by using your intellect. So the first one is, but you can also go to faith. We know that God made us. And we're Catholic, so we believe that He gave us the gifts of the gift of free will. He gave us will and intellect. So you have the gift already. You're a human being, you've got it right. It's all about developing. You have I'm sorry, but I did everything in metaphors. You have a muscle here. How heavy you want to lift is all a matter of how much exercise you're willing to do. So you can let it atrophy, or whatever you do, you'll have a bicep there. And you can just work it, and the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. And then, of course, it cooperates with the will, and the more you exercise your will for good, the stronger your will gets. My will is my weak part, my weak point, and that has been very hard for me to exercise, and I haven't completely solved that. So, my intellect is, it's kind of like somebody that really hurt one leg, and they're like, limping. It's like me sometimes. It's my intellect's going, I'll carry you. It's like, no, that's not the way people are meant to walk. Other comments, thoughts? Did it inspire anything? yes. Very good.
Is it Faith and Reason? It's one of my favorite encyclicals.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that's funny is that in the Catholic faith, we always have embraced faith and reason. And I remember one of the quotes from Martin Luther, what is needed for faith is the death of reason. That's a real quote from Martin Luther. And it's like, and I understand, yeah, he did some reasoning in scriptures and stuff, but they have to work together.
I think one of the reasons why, I'm kind of that person who, like, if something's wrong or like is like a sin or something, it's kind of like that question of like, well, why? Like, why is it wrong? Why is it a sin? And I think the only thing that really actually helped me understand like that we're called to not get drunk, for me, it's because someone explained to me it weakens the intellect and darkens the intellect and weakens the will. And so just hearing that helped me like, okay, I don't want to get drunk because these gifts are from God. And so like, if God gave me these gifts, why would I want to darken them and weaken them?
So in that reasoning, do you remember the other part of that? Because whoever told you that, there was another part they probably told you.
What?
The other part of it is, what's the most famous thing that weaken the will and darken the intellect? One famous event. The fall.
Oh, yeah. The fall.
Yeah. So what happens is, it's actually saying, I am redeemed, but now I want to go back to the fall.
Right.
I want to go back to my fallen state, because my fallen state is the weakened will and the dark.
Right, and that's when sin entered the world.
Oh yeah, that is such a huge thing. That's so great that you got that, because see, it's
That's
like,
what really helped me, because I'm like, if I'm drinking, I'm like, I need to make sure I'm aware that I don't, like, that I'm not losing my ambitions. Because
That's right.
as soon as you lose your ambitions, that's when you're not, like, going towards God, you're going away from Him.
I think that's the reason why I've never really had any real serious temptation to drink. I drank a lot for a while, not a lot, and smoked dope and stuff like that, up until the time I made my surge. Very briefly though, but the thing was, see, for me, it bothered me because I didn't want my intellect darkened.
Right.
Not because it's a gift from God. I had no holy intentions. It was strictly that. When I felt that way, I was no longer able to think clearly. And I didn't like that. I don't like not being able to understand my world. And, it's not that I understand everything, but that sense, it's not a matter of losing control. It's that all of a sudden, I am broken. I'm breaking myself. I'm not able to function the way that I love to function.
Right.
Not the way I should function. See, you're thinking should. You're thinking morally and beautifully. That's great. That's more like that. For me, I'm just self-centered. I'm just thinking, this is what I want.
Right.
I'm not doing something that's going to break it. I might as well just cut off my hand if I'm going to do that. And I'm not saying I haven't got drunk.
Right.
Because I also have passions. This is a little confession. We went out, when I used to travel a lot, we get free tickets. And I forgot to put the timer back on, so. Oh yeah, we were okay to watch it. It's very close. We went out I flew Carol out to St. Louis, and we drove down to Nashville because I didn't have to pay for it. I could get a rental car, I got hotels for free, and everything. Memphis, we went to Memphis, and we went down to Beale Street, got ribs, and I drank 2 beers and 2 doubles of Jack. And we're getting, because it was a perfect night. I had Carol, we were out there for dinner, we're out in this cool place, everything's free. We were in the back of a jazz little club thing in the back where they had some rock and roll actually.
And we were walking, not driving.
No, after we were walking. And then so I said, we had to go. And Carol's like, I don't think that'll be done. So we walked. It's very rare. But you see, the problem for me is that if I am really, really feeling good, then sometimes I'll embrace the moment. And the great saying that Father James Hartnett at Blessed Sacrament said was, we are tempted through our gifts. So all this passion, all this energy is absolutely deadly. But it's also God's gift, so I can't get rid of it. It's stuck, you know. Can't get it off. It's there. So I just have to use it for His glory, and I have not done that so little as I should. It's harder. I control it every day. It's very, very hard. There's like 2 minutes. Anybody else got?
I don't know if you wanted to say something about feelings versus reason. Because I find that lately, just even, you know, I see a lot of even Catholic friends that seem to me making decisions based on feelings more than reason. I don't know if you could want to touch on
A lot of the feeling stuff is really the will, and that people have persuaded them to turn their will the wrong way, to want something else. A lot of the stuff that looks like people are choosing based on feelings is people choosing to feel good. And I don't mean good like, oh, this feels nice. I mean good like, I am virtuous. And if you start worrying about how you look to other people, vanity, or pride, you know, that you want to believe that you're good, then people, you're so easily manipulated. It makes it so easy because people just go, I'll just give you this feeling, vote for me, agree with me on this thing, and then you'll feel like a really good person. We've seen advertisements like this. I mean, you know, just the old thing of the cars. I saw one that was a Cadillac ad, and it shows someone driving down the street in their Cadillac, and it's like, you'll know that you made it when you're driving this car. It's got nothing to do with, I mean, they're just manipulating them. You know, they're manipulating viewers. But yeah, I can't cover everything, you know, because if you know me at all, you know I could go on all day. But the problem is that we end up having to choose either ourselves or God. And I don't show people as an option. You can't choose others. This sounds funny, but you can't choose others. You choose yourself or you choose God. Because if you choose God, others are thrown in. But if you choose yourself, others are excluded. But when people say, oh, I choose others, they're usually choosing themselves. Because they're choosing themselves to feel like they're a person who chooses others. Does that make sense? The idea is that you go, oh, I'm a good person. I chose others. Oh, boy. Oh, look at me. But that's just choosing self. It's choosing to build up my own ego. But if you choose God, if you're really choosing God, then you get others, you get yourself, you get your most authentic self. You get everything else thrown in because God has everything. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
And then can you tell how much I just love I could do this all. Captain America, I could do this all. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. And I don't know, I think we're going to break now. That's next.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, fill this in now or whatever, but really think about it because I think it's worth it. And I hope you'll discover something beautiful in yourself. Because whatever God gave you is good, and whatever it is that calling you to Him is good in its purest form. It's all good.
And I would like to say,
Oh,
I would like to say something, and correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the things that you were talking about when Nicole was asking the question about intellect, you said it's not about what you know, but understand.
oh, and wisdom. You kind of go in the direction of wisdom, and that's true. Yes, absolutely.
And so, just for those that are more like me and less like Ed, I mean, when you talk about intellect in a more broader sense, not specifically talking about the gift of intellect from God, but, you know, Ed retains so much of what he learns, and he's got this passion for learning. Where with me, I don't have that gift. But even with the for all that learning, and you said this, that God gives us all the intellect, and that we kind of, it's more about taking what we have in our lives and understanding it, looking at God and what He's doing in our life, and then making sense of it and thinking about it and making it, understanding it to the point that we can benefit from it. It just so happens you have so much that you get to benefit from because you know so much.
But I don't benefit from it when my will goes in the wrong direction. That's the problem. That's a cute thing that I just shared with my granddaughters here today. Because we were talking, I didn't say this before, but I'm not here to tell you about parenting. But if you're parenting, you've got to build that child's intellect, because that, you can't control their will. Their will's going to go where it goes. You can punish them all day. But that intellect, you've got to build their ability to reason and come to their own conclusions about what's right, what's in their best interest. My daughters, not you, but one of my other daughters, but I think you would agree. I was talking about the difference in raising girls and boys, and one of my daughters said, yeah, but we knew what we had to lose. Guys didn't understand what they had to lose. It's an interesting thought. I'll give you this little cute thing. This is clear, but anyway. Knowledge, and you've heard this before, some of you. Knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in the fruit salad. Philosophy is wondering whether that makes ketchup a smoothie. Common sense is knowing that ketchup isn't a smoothie. Did that with my granddaughters, the youngest of which I think got 8, almost 9.
9, I think she's 9.
And, yeah, and she fully gets it. So you can teach them at a very early age. I had good discussions with Catherine when she was 6, and she understood the real presence of the Lord in the Eucharist at that age, and could talk about it. Just,
Amazing. Parents are doing something right.
God is good.
All the
Well,
time.
and it's also a sign for all of us, that there's possibilities. We can do so much more. I wish I had time to tell you. We can do so much more. We're capable of so much. In the Old Testament, in Psalms, I think, and Jesus quoted it, "Have I not said ye are gods?" That's God's talk. That's God talking. That's how, for it made him for a little while less than the angels. Just a little less than the angels. Thank you. I'm trying to be good about my time.